Okay, I've put the album cover up here. This is the album I was listening to. My friend had this album. It's called Sabbath Bloody Sabbath by the band Black Sabbath. And I had one album by Black Sabbath prior to this, which is the only one I ever had or heard, and that was the Paranoid album. And this album, just looking at it, we've grown up, we've heard the name Black Sabbath for years now, and it doesn't hardly raise an eyebrow anymore. But back then, they were like the only band quite doing this that was decidedly dark. And it, you know, even though I was very naive, there's some part of you that just knows instinctively that these guys are not your average rock band, that there's something a little bit darker about them. And kind of like Larry the Cable Guy says when he tells a joke and says, "I don't care who you are, that's funny right there." I could say about this, I don't care who you are, this album and this band is dark, and especially back then, they were the only ones doing this kind of a dark thing. And so I knew instinctively, you know, I'd gone to church my whole life, and I knew that there was such a thing as the devil, and I knew that these guys were sort of glorifying that, but that was as far as it went. I didn't know anything more about it than that. And so you got the 666 thing on here. You've got a very ugly looking scene. And so I was interested. I was looking at this record, and I want to hear what this says. And here's the song that became, this is the first song on side 2 at that time. On a CD it just plays right through. But at that time, second song on side 2. And here's what it sounds like. Very strange synthesizer. I put this record on, and I'm standing there, and immediately, when this song began to play, something very strange began to happen to me. I'll just let you hear a moment of it. Ozzy Osbourne, of course, lead singer. Yes, I know the secret, that's within your mind. You think all the people who worship you are blind, okay? I'm going to read the lyrics for you. Oh, they're not in here. Okay. I think they were on the other. Anyway, I kind of remember it. You're just like Big Brother giving us your trust, and when you have played enough, you'll just cast our souls into the dust. Anyway, I was listening to this song, and something immediately began to happen to me that I didn't understand or expect or know what to do about. I began to feel a dizziness, a buzz, a strange sensation coming over me as I stood there listening to that song. And the experience I had took no longer to take place than that song took to play. I stood there transfixed, I stood there stiff and staring at the ground and listening to that song. And I had it cranked up. I mean, there was nobody else around, and nobody was going to complain. So that stereo sounded awesome. I had it cranked up, and I stood there and just let it, you know, I was listening to the music like any other album, but this particular album was like nothing else. And I was having this experience, and I had to come to grips with what was happening to me. And a number of thoughts shot through my mind very, very rapidly, and I had to decide, first of all, whether or not to be afraid, because it was something so extraordinary, and I was wondering if I should fear this. I was sensing that what was happening to me was directly tied to this album, obviously. I also felt like what was happening to me was supernatural in nature, and that I was being sort of in the presence of something. Something was visiting me. Something was coming to me, coming upon me, coming over me, and I had to decide real quick, is this something I want, or is this something I don't want? And I wondered if I should be afraid. And I was afraid. And so, almost as fast as I could wonder, I got an answer. And the answer was almost kind of like what happens in the Bible. This is really funny as I think about this. Every time a supernatural encounter with one of God's angels and any human being happens, almost the first thing out of the angel's mouth is, "Fear not." And that's what this presence told me. They said, we're not here to hurt you, don't be afraid. And so I was like, okay, we'll see about that, you know.